we've been lied to big time, man. And actually, maybe even not lied to, but we believed lies. The first time I thought about the earth being flat, that wasn't from coming up from up here. That was from a show I was listening to on YouTube, or that my dad was listening to on YouTube. And as my dad sat there and laughed and made fun of what the guy was saying, I was like, whoa, but this guy's, he's not wrong. The things he's saying are true.
Your thoughts on this realm are rather unique to me, or at least you present them in a unique way. The way you tie in biblical scripture with this idea, this concept of this cosmology, and even more so
Yes.
about the current technology that we see with space travel, the space presentation, Elon Musk, all these things. You have a very unique way that you tie this understanding in with scriptures that I enjoy so much. So you said your dad was watching something and somebody blurted out
Yeah.
flat earth. What was the circumstance?
So I was just working in the shop, and my dad was listening to this Stephen Molyneux on the radio or whatever, and he had a flat earther, and they were talking about water. They were talking about space, and like very basic. I don't even actually remember exactly what the conversation was. I just remember my adverse reaction to what my dad was experiencing. He was like, this guy is stupid, and he's kind of laughing at him. And I can understand why a person thinks that way, but in my heart deep, I was saying, this is not things that are crazy. This is things that actually are true. I think that God is showing us something that's been hidden, at least from us, something that's been hidden throughout. I don't know. We don't know how long, but I know that my grandparents and their grandparents probably had this solar system belief. And, for that to be true, the earth has to be rotating. And that's what really got me, Z. I have these memories of where I was and the conversation I was having. And this one happened to be at my house. I was in my kitchen or my dining room, and it's wood floor. And I was with my brother and dad, and we got on the conversation of earth rotation. And like, I got off of my chair during this conversation, and I touched the floor, and I said, this floor that we walk on, we're eating on it, we live here, this is not moving. This is not rotating. If you went outside and pretended you lived in the stars and looked back, maybe it would look like it's rotating because the stars are rotating. And that was one conversation. And they're just like, that's so stupid. And I'm like, how can that be stupid when you're sitting in a chair, not moving? It's so contradictory to me. This is the way I see it. But some people see me to be that way, I guess. But some of these things, they don't come from us. These came from God. The one that made all this is showing us it just in these recent years. He's showing us that he made it. He's showing us that he did all of this. And I think that, to me, that's awesome. First of all, the solar system is in the sky, right? We see planets orbiting the sun in the sky throughout the year or whatever. But Earth is beneath you. It's not in the sky. So that's something very important. I think that like anyone should be able to understand that we were taught that the earth was a part of that system, but it's clearly not. That system's up there, and the earth is beneath us. The sky part of our reality. We have like the part we stand and live on, but the part that's above us, it's a huge, if you go outside and you look, it's like this like dome or whatever you want to call it. You perceive this entire huge sky. And we were all taught that the ground was part of that sky, and it's not. The ground is always part of the ground. It has nothing to do with the sky. The sky has all these lights, and the lights are moving around, And like you were saying, the lights are moving around us on the ground. This is a very special place that we're in.
So let me ask you, Joe.
Yeah.
What do you think space is?
I'll say celestial water. It seems that this medium is moving, and it also seems that the medium that we like, the waters above, we could call it, that medium doesn't have any of the kind of physical properties that our atmosphere has. It's just different. Okay, first of all, I don't think people exist outside of Earth. I don't think that the human body exists outside of the Earth. I think that the astronauts are what exist outside of the Earth. And it's only a show. Where are all these unclean spirits? They're in the deep, right? When Jesus cast out Legion from that guy into that herd of swine, where did all the demons, where did they beg him to go? They said, throw us into that, or cast us into that swine, not into the deep. We don't want to go into the deep. The scriptures clearly say it's waters. He divided the waters. And then here's the thing too, the nighttime, just when it's dark out, when the sun's far enough away that we can't see it and it's dark, that's night. And we still use the same terminology that God gave it at in Genesis, because he divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day, and he called the darkness night. So when we're in a place, like if you go in the closet and shut the door, turn the light off, it's dark in there, but I don't think that that's the same kind of darkness where that's right beneath God's feet. Because in Psalm, it says he bowed the heavens and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And his pavilion round about him was dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. So definitely there's an element of darkness in the sky in the scriptures. And I think that that's what space is. I don't think it's a vacuum. When we go above that air, it's darkness. And they call it space, right? When I'm reading in Genesis, just the first two verses in the Bible, in the second verse, it says that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And when we look at that word deep, that's like a deep sea or an abyss, like it's called the Great Sea or the Great Hanging Sea, or there's many names for the deep, but that is the darkness, that it's waters. And Enoch even talks about that in Enoch 67. He said that these dark waters, these angels ascend in these dark waters, and it changes the temperature of the waters. And then at one point they become a fire which burns forever. And I'm going, so this darkness is literally going to be fire at some point, and that's what the lake of fire would be, dark waters on fire. On the earth, we have physics. We really do understand a lot about this world that we live in. I'm just saying, like, ice freezes at 32 degrees, and all the physics we know about the world, that's consistent. It's like laws that are here that they just can't be argued with. If you drop something, it falls, and if you let a helium balloon go, it goes up. Just the physics we know. But what scientists or whatever have done, like modern science, they say we can apply those physics to everything in the sky, because they assume that the sky is a place where there's physical and material things. I think we've been wrong about the nature of the sky.
Dude, let's get down to it. Your theory is when you get high enough that indeed you can, let's say, float, but it's not in the same way we conceive it as. Do you think that they hit maybe a different density layer, maybe like almost like a liquidy, water-like layer that enables them to float, just like one would float in water?
They think it's a vacuum. They think it's a vacuum, but it's another nature. It's another reality. Like going, and like in the Bible, I would say that inside of the firmament, that's where God put the sun, moon, and stars. You notice how the sun, moon, and stars, they just go around. They don't need fuel. They don't need anything to keep them in orbit or whatever. They just keep going. And to me, it makes more sense to admit that I don't understand the nature of what they're calling a vacuum and what the Bible's calling waters, dark waters. If we're looking at this and trying to figure out, what is space? Well, a few things I've learned about the solar system that like everyone knows this, but might not have thought of it this way before. But everything in the solar system that exists in the solar system is perpetually in a state of free fall. It's falling. So everything in the solar system is falling around a larger body. The Earth is falling towards the sun and orbiting the sun. Our moon is that's what the solar system is. Jupiter's moons are orbiting Jupiter. They're falling, perpetually free falling. So this space station, you notice that on the space station, they are in a state of free fall. They're falling, right? So where do we know of a place of darkness in the scriptures where everything's falling perpetually? A place that's bottomless, a bottomless abyss of darkness. Do we know of a place like that in scripture?
I guess it would be, referred to as hell, or the classic conception of hell.
Yeah, and then like it's also a great sea, because there's these dark waters above. So in our world, they would say, oh, space is a vacuum. Well, in my world, they're wrong. It's not a vacuum, clearly.
Let me ask you, since we're referencing Enoch.
Yeah.
The book of Enoch, interestingly enough, was left out of the 66 canonical books of the Bible, but it's mentioned multiple times in multiple books of the Bible. Enoch is referenced in the Bible, but yet the book of Enoch was excluded from the Bible. Do you think this was on purpose by the church?
I'll tell you why I think it was. The significance of it was for a specific generation. And it says that right at the beginning, the words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me. And from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw. But not for this generation, but for a remote one, for which is to come. So this is for the last generation. So if we find significance in this book, maybe we're the last generation. I don't know. That's just for people to ponder on their own. But Enoch went to a place, he actually described something very similar to what I would call the solar system. He went to this place of darkness. He was taken there by angels. And this was in chapter 17, if anyone's interested. But he went to this place of darkness. The ones that were there were like flaming fires, or flaming fire. And then it says, or Enoch said that they could appear as humans when they wished, though. Like they could appear as human when they wished, or as men. So that makes me think right there. I'm like, okay, with these flaming fires, they're spirits of some kind, but they can manifest it as people. That's scary. But it's the next chapter. He's seeing the treasuries of the winds, and he's just seeing a lot of these heavenly things. And he goes to this place that he was kind of fearful of, and he saw these 7 stars there, and they were bound there. And he was asking the angel, why are they bound here? What's going on? And what are they here for? And the angel says, oh, this is a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. It was a waste and horrible place. I saw there's 7 stars. So there's stars like great burning mountains. And to me, when I inquired regarding them, the angel said, this place is the end of heaven and earth. That'd be like the firmament, right? The end of heaven and earth. The end of earth, the beginning of heaven, that would be in the sky to me. But it says, this place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. This is interesting that in the book of Enoch, he describes the planets orbiting the sun. But it's not a good place. Like, it's not what we have been taught it is. But so he sees these 7 stars, and the angel says at the beginning of their rising, those were the 7 that transgressed the ordained courses that God commanded all the stars. And the stars which roll over the fire, doesn't that sound like a solar system? These are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times, and he was wroth with them and bound them, imprisoned them, till the time when their guilt should be consummated, even for 10,000 years. And so now if we look at the sky today, we have innumerable fixed stars. Actually, they're on the screen behind me. So that's what we call the fixed stars, I guess.
The stars move, but relative to each other, they're fixed in the constellations.
Yes.
But we know that the so-called planets are not fixed.
They have retrograde motion, and they do their own courses. To me, the planets are stars that God imprisoned in an orbit around the sun. So when they talk about low Earth orbit, that's not a good thing. It's a prison. Any kind of orbit is a prison. It's a spiritual prison. The word planet itself comes from planeo or something like that, and that means, it literally means to lead astray, to cause to wander, to deceive, to cause to go off course. Like it's basically to sway away from truth and into deception. So there's 7 in the sky that do their own courses, and he continues on explaining that they're bound there, and that they're rolling over this fire, which is just so interesting to me, that he saw that they were being tormented, but that they were in the next chapter. He also mentioned that in this prison there was not just these 7 stars. There's all the angels that took human wives. In Genesis 6, I'm thinking that that's referring to. And those angels that in the book of Enoch earlier in chapter 10, it said that they were buried in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations. And then once that judgment was consummated, that the judgment that was forever would be consummated. And it said, and they will be brought to the abyss of fire. And so Enoch's actually he's seeing the abyss of fire, and he's seeing these 7 stars rolling around this fire. And in the next chapter, it brings up the angels that took human wives, those watchers, or the 200 or whatever that came down. And it says that they're bound there, and that they would be there in the abyss of fire, and that it's a prison. In the next chapter, chapter 19 in the book of Enoch, and Uriel said to me, here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods.
So this is also referenced in Genesis
6. Yes.
Right, with the sons of God laying with the daughters of man and producing the men of renown, or the Nephilim.
But when I look up at the sky with my telescope, I see all the stars, the fixed stars we call them, doing circles in the sky. Like they all go in a circle. And those 7, the planets, are the ones that have their own courses. They don't go with the fixed stars. And so what I see when I look up at the sky is I literally see this story, because there are 7 that are just wandering about, and they go in retrograde, and they do not do what the fixed stars do. So I can see that as being 2 separate kind of stars, or angels, or whatever you want to call them. The word planet itself tells you that they're misleading men. But so it says here, they assume many different forms. And I'm thinking to myself of all the things that we see in space.
You're conjecturing that the heavenly bodies that we call stars, and the 7 ones that we call wandering stars, seem to be some kind of Let's call them angels, whatever you want to look at them as, these entities. The 7 ones that we call planets or wandering stars sort of rebelled against their place in the heavens, and that's why they move differently. They're not fixed relative to the heavens, and they have their own course of action. They've transgressed their creation. They've almost like we hear of the fallen ones. They rebelled. They transgressed against the creator and the creation. We know that we do name these planets after the quote-unquote gods or demigods, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, right? Makes sense. You know, we're told in the scriptures that these fallen ones were bounded in some way for
cast down to hell.
Cast down to hell for 10,000 years, some of the things say. And so you see the space as this hell, this abyss that are binding these fallen ones for whatever reason, where they can move about, and there's some sense they're influencing us here. We know when we hit, like, we say, oh, Mars is in retrograde, or Mercury's in retrograde, or the grand conjunction of
Venus,
Jupiter and Mars, or Venus, and that affects us in some way here.
If you imagine that there's this solar system, the angel was telling Enoch, this place is the end of heaven and earth. So, I mean, that right there, that would very much probably be like what they call space or low Earth orbit or whatever. It's the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. So then here's the solar system. And the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of the rising. What I'm seeing there is that these planets, they're actually angels that didn't obey God. And so God bound them there. And so they're sitting there rolling around this fire. They're orbiting the sun. And if you think about it, what is an orbit? Because, like, why are the astronauts floating? Why are anything that's in space is in a state of like 0G or whatever? Why? Because everything in space is falling around something else. Whether you believe that this is real or not, I'm just saying the concept that NASA believes, they're falling around the globe at 17,000 miles an hour. The ISS started falling in 1998, and it has not reached the bottom, and it never will. You get what I'm saying? Because
like an abyss.
It's a perpetual thing, and it's a dark abyss, the blackness of darkness. That's what the book of Jude said. These wandering stars foaming out their own shame. Jude verse 13, and it says, raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever.
I'd imagine you get some pushback from some of the, say, flat Earth community in terms of your beliefs. You know, there's a lot of doctrine believing flat earthers that may take issue with some of it. You know, we're told there's a firmament. The firmament's impenetrable. You know, we have this particular understanding of what this place is and how it may be enclosed. And you're speaking of space program that's actually penetrating through the firmament somewhat.
I do understand the pushback because it doesn't make sense if I say, okay, because the way that I think typically people have been understanding the firmament is that the word is heaven. I mean, God called the firmament heaven. And so, like, just the idea of heaven, it would seem that there's only good angels there and God's there, and it's like a good place. But we have to remember that it's a spiritual place, and I don't know what that word means, but I don't know what a spirit is necessarily. But the spiritual realm, God is a spirit, and angels are, I guess they'd be spirits. But I get from Enoch so much knowledge from Enoch, but he said, in heaven shall be their dwelling. Keep in mind, we're talking about the firmament of heaven. So it's not like the firmament of heaven doesn't have any evil spirits in it. The spirits of heaven, whether they're fallen or not, they dwell in heaven. And I know there was a time, there was 70 generations that they were buried in the valleys of the earth. But then there was another judgment after that was consummated. There was another judgment that said that they would be led off to the abyss of fire, where they would be forever, confined forever. Now, there's other books. There's a lot of other books that talk about this firmament and the ascension of Isaiah, or whatever you want, the vision of Isaiah, son of Amos. It's same Isaiah that wrote the book of Isaiah in the Bible. He had a vision, and he was taken up through the levels of heaven by an angel, and he described everything in every layer. And when he went into the firmament, he saw, and this is, I'll quote it. He said, and there I saw Samuel and his hosts, and the angels of Satan were envying one another, or fighting with one another. So Isaiah saw evil angels, or Satan's angels, fighting with each other in the firmament. I'm just trying to kind of make some points that Satan can dwell in the firmament. And like, what do we have in Revelation 12? He's cast out of heaven into the earth. He's cast out of heaven. And there's another one, the vision of St. Paul, or the apocalypse of St. Paul the Apostle. He said that when he went up to the third heaven to see paradise, he described this, a very similar thing when he went up. But an angel took him up there, and an angel actually told him, look back on the firmament, when they were in the first heaven or whatever. And he looked back at the firmament, and he said, I saw in the same place oblivion and power that deceives and draws down to itself the hearts of men. And then he named like 5 evil spirits that, like even 2 Peter, when it says, for God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell. Previously, I would say, well, that's saying down to hell. That's obviously below us. It's beneath us. And I would say, I think it is beneath us. I think hell is beneath us, but I think it's also above us in a certain way, like in the heavenly realm, but the very bottom, the darkness part of heaven, of the heavenly realm. It's like a veil. It's a great hanging sea that covers this earth. And so, as far as like the pushback or whatever, I'm not saying that I think you could get on a rocket and go into space. Only astronauts can do that. And there's only a few of them. So all I'm saying is that the idea of going into space is not real. It's not real at all, because no one has ever gone except these astronauts. And if you ask me, they're the most suspect. And now when I watch their interviews now and everything, I just see them trying to talk the world into believing in that place, and that it's such a beautiful, awesome place, when literally they're perpetually falling into a dark abyss. Like there's no bottom if you go sideways at 17,000 miles an hour as a human being, as a creation of God, as a man, you're not going anywhere. This is the reason why they can talk people into, and it's going to get stronger and stronger with time, talking people into the idea of the globe. So these astronauts can go up there and they can orbit the Earth, but they're really not orbiting the Earth. They're just circling in this place, this place of darkness, which has no physics. It's not part of Earth. It's a
right. You're saying
place.
it's a physics we can't understand. It's a completely different.
It's a celestial. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's celestial physics, whatever you want to call that. I don't think there's probably like a real good descriptive word for that, but I'm just saying it's different than our physics here.
You referenced Enoch. Enoch talks about the falling ones.
Yes.
They talked about how they gathered on Mount Hermon and made a pact.
Yes.
They made a pact with each other to basically interact with humanity in a particular way. Now, there's a lot of ways we can look at that. They, in a way, brought humanity, according to Enoch, knowledge, technology, things like that. Even stuff like, teaching women. I was just going to say that, teaching women how to wear makeup, or
how to do abortions.
Right. Metallurgy, medicine in that way. Well, we're also told throughout history about the story of Prometheus in the Greek mythology, who brought fire from the gods. Fire could be analogous to technology, knowledge. Back to the Garden of Eden, we're talking about the fall of man, the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and evil. It seems as though there was a state of man that we can have a concept of, that at some point there was a forbidden interaction with these angelic beings that led to a fallen state. This isn't even a new story, man. We could look at the story about the Tower of Babel.
Same thing.
What the Tower of Babel may be with Nimrod, and at the point where humanity was at a point where there was a common language, there was probably a common understanding, and this idea of man trying to reach the heavens and ascend to the throne of God.
And to smite him and to kill him. That was in their hearts, that's what they wanted.
What is it, this compulsion that man has to reach the heavens and become like God, the gods? Could this be the influence that the fallen ones had on us? Are we in some way genetically mingled with the fallen ones, where we have this rebellious nature inside of us? Is this the true fall of man, where we want to be as gods, the tree of good and knowledge, the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge? Is this just in us genetically to rebel? Because what I see, Joe, is a wonderful, beautiful earth that has everything we need. It's just right there, dude. The food's there, the shelter's there, the medicine's there. We have communities and we have families, and we learn how to manage this earth. But we're presented with this delusion, this deception, that we need these things of so-called science to advance humanity. What advancement? Look around, everybody. Do we look like we're advancing in any way? Again, what is this inside of us, this rebelling against the creator and the creation? Apologies.
It's an answer for you, a very specific answer for you. Why do humans want to go up to the sky? Well, it's because they follow Lucifer. Now, I don't think they are trying to follow Lucifer, but that's what Lucifer has in his heart. It says this in Isaiah 14. He said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. Makes me think of the space station. He said, I will set my congregation in the sides of the north. I didn't understand that until I was reading, I think, Psalm 48. It talks about the sides of the north being God's holy mountain. That's the sides of the north, is God's holy mountain. So Satan says, I'm going to set my congregation on your mountain. And then he said, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. When people follow him, they don't do it on purpose. When the construction workers were working for Nimrod, building that tower, and they're laboring every day, do you think those people knew in their hearts that they were warring against God? But that's how God saw it. God said it was a sin and a transgression that they were building that tower, and they were building against him. And it actually, in the book of Jasher, it actually says 3 different ways that they were doing a transgression. The first was they wanted to ascend into heaven and smite God. The second one, they wanted to ascend into heaven and kill God and take the heavens for their own. And the other interesting one to me was that they wanted to ascend into heaven and place their own gods there and serve them. And I'm like, satellites, space station, we built a taller tower, I guess, than Nimrod could do. You know, Elon Musk built a higher tower, whatever. It's the same thing.
Right, but it's the same mindset, the same motivation to usurp the creation for some reason.
There's an apocryphal book called The Vision of St. Paul. Paul the Apostle was taken up to the third heaven, and he wrote a book about it, and it wasn't found until he was long gone. But in that book, he said that the angel told him to look back. When they went up to the first heaven or whatever, the angel said, look back at the earth, or look back at the firmament. And he looked back at the firmament, and he said he saw in the same place oblivion that deceives and draws down to itself the hearts of men. And when I read that, I'm thinking, And that sounds like what Enoch was saying about the planets. That they'll draw mankind, they'll lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. And I'm just going, and Elon Musk is telling everybody that we're gonna go move to Mars. Like, that would be, in my understanding, Mars is not a place. Mars is a spiritual entity that's assuming that form specifically for men to look at it. Like, for men to look up in the sky and see what they think is land. They're playing with the desires of the natural desires of people. They're saying, if we make ourselves appear like places, they're going to have to come here. And so what do we find ourselves in? We find ourselves in a world where there's a $450 billion a year industry to go to these places. These places where there's nothing to offer, not even air or water or food or anything. Absolutely nothing that can benefit a person. But men will do, like, I think this is in our nature to push the boundaries. You know, like if you took one of those cars across the salt flats and you got 600 miles an hour, wouldn't you want to do it again and get 601 miles an hour? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we want to achieve more, and maybe that's just in our nature or whatever. But I think going up to the sky is the same thing. I think that it's in our nature to want to explore. Like, if you had a lion caged in like a quarter acre, he's just going to walk around the fence. But if you make it big enough, he just won't even care that the fence is there. If you make it big enough, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. I think that type of mentality. Well, we know they're going to be looking up here. And so by the time they get telescopes, if we put these rocks here, make this look like a place, they are going to be determined to go here, to go there, to go to those places.
When we talk about being in space and all the efforts and resources supposedly that go into this endeavor, how does it make any sense that we're in space? We apparently have multiple space stations now. You have the ISS, you have the Chinese space station. You have multiple countries apparently that have gone to the moon, not necessarily manned missions. Apparently it was just the US, but apparently the Soviets, the Chinese or the Japanese,
both,
and India now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all these countries going to the moon. We have multiple private industries now. We have, of course, SpaceX. To my knowledge, is one of the only private groups that says that they've actually gone to low Earth orbit. Joe, apparently SpaceX is sending people to and fro the ISS.
Correct.
To my knowledge, Bezos and Richard Branson, they're just kind of doing the 62-mile joyride thing with like Shatner and Strahan. I don't think they're claiming low Earth orbit, which is 250 miles, guys. They say the ISS is 250 miles above Earth, and they say that douchebag Elon Musk has done it, and he's cargoing things to and from, including people, human cargo, to the ISS. Cars.
Here's the interesting thing about Musk. In the Bible, in Revelation, there's a beast that deceives the world, and he does it a very specific way. He deceives the world and those that dwell in the world by doing great wonders. And the great wonders is making fire come down from the sky in the sight of men, so people would see this. And Elon Musk is the only person that's literally making fire come down from the sky when he lands those dang rockets. And half the people listening right now are like, that's fake as F. Probably more than half the people in this live stream right now are saying that's just fake, or they're playing it in a video in reverse. How are you so naive? And I'm saying, I'm not being naive. I'm not saying it's real, but I'm certainly not saying it's fake. I'm saying it's a lie. A lot of these old books, these Apocrypha books and stuff, they talk about at this time, people call it the end times or the end of days or the end of the age or whatever, that all these books talk about this day of the Lord, you know, there's all these different names for this time that's to come. And in this time, like all these old books are talking about a secret being revealed that change everything, and it would be the truth, and people would find out that they
Right.
were living in a lie.
It seems as though they have a script that they're following. The script seems to be Revelation, bro. It's called Scripture, right?
And Enoch and all these books, they're playing out like to the T. Whoever has made fire come down from the sky. And it's not like, it can't be like a nuclear warhead or something. It can't be that kind of like destruction fire, because this fire doesn't destroy things. It actually deceives things. So that's the context of this story is important to keep. This was a deception, this fire coming down from the sky. It may not even be real. It was a lie that was told. So that's why when they're landing rockets and making literal fire come down from this, that's why that rings so much in my ear.
There's a dragon, end of the Bible in Revelation. Satan himself is John sees him as a dragon. And this dragon is flying in the firmament where the stars are. And John called it a great wonder and in heaven. So Satan's flying around in heaven, apparently, at the end of the world. If you just read the story in Revelation, there's a story there. And this dragon ends up going up and down from heaven, and he's cast out into the earth. And there's no more place for him up there. Right now, there is a space station. Whatever you believe it is or isn't, might not even be important. I would say that there's a dragon that's bringing people up and down. People, I use that word loosely, but astronauts, I'll say, are going up and down on a dragon up to this throne that's up there. And this throne, they call it an orbiting laboratory, you know. And it's a 0G environment. It's literally falling as if it is in a bottomless pit. You can quote the astronauts saying that it's a bottomless pit. Deepest black. It's almost like it has a texture to it. Like they really describe this abyss. They say the Earth looks like a small island in a dark abyss. There's all sorts of descriptions that the astronauts make that are verbatim almost from the Bible. Well, this beast in Revelation, he comes up out of the bottomless pit and he goes into perdition. To me, I think that's what the space station is doing. And whether people think it's a good thing and it's good for human health, they do a lot of experiments like skin cell, whatever, all their stuff they do. They make a lot of technology for certain prescription drugs up there that they couldn't discover unless they were in like a 0G environment. A lot of things that they're doing up there. And it's interesting because I think that's even written in Enoch also, that the angels would be ascending and descending in these waters, and it would be for the health of mankind that they would be doing this for health, for people's health. And but it was actually bringing their destruction.
So they're building this starship, and people think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But we were talking about these books and these old books, and these guys they claim that they were shown these visions and they were told that this is what the world is going to be. You're seeing the world at the end of the age. I don't know the timing of anything. I'm just saying that they described a dragon, for one, flying up to the stars and causing the sky to roll up like a scroll. And I know people say, no, Jesus is going to do that, or God does that. No man could do that. But that's not what is written. It's written in Revelation that the Son of God will come and destroy those who destroy the earth. He's not going to destroy the earth as far as what I understand Revelation to be, that's the time when he needs to save people from the earth, because the earth is going to change. It's go through whatever that means. It's going to, I mean, fire and stars falling and all this stuff. I don't know. They're building this starship, and it's a massive rocket. And like Enoch, if anyone's interested in just some chapters to check out, look at Enoch 57 and Enoch chapter 60. He saw these men riding in these chariots up in the sky on the winds, going all over the place, and their chariots or their wagons were so loud that it shook, and they shook the heavens, and it made the heavens. It's about sound. It's a sound that happens from these loud flying machines that causes the foundations of the earth to be moved from their place. Even the Solomon, the Testament of Solomon, he talks about a great pillar being flying through the air. But it was demons holding it up. It was 2 demons holding it up, and he said it was of enormous size, and it could shake the entire earth, and it could end the earth, like destroy the earth. And so Solomon, with his wisdom, he bound them, and he said, stay there. And he said, and they're there to this day, but when they let down the pillar, then it'll be the end of the world. Technology, just rocket engines themselves, the kind of energy that they produce, it's the height of technology when it comes to acceleration. This is where it gets into biblical stuff, scripture stuff. But so what a rocket engine does to make thrust is it's similar to a jet engine, but way more complicated and way harder to do. The Falcon 9 uses liquid methane and liquid oxygen. And to fight against the laws of physics, like the air and things like that, to fight against that, yet not destroy the vehicle that you're fighting with, right? So the thrust is created by air and fire. Think of a windstorm, like anyone that's been sailing on a sailboat knows the power of the wind is it's actually stronger than any element we have. The wind will destroy anything if it's strong enough. Keep in mind in the book of Revelation that there's Michael and his angels are fighting against the dragon, which is Satan, and his angels. Well, and like in Revelation 7, it says that there were 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth from hurting the earth. So it's given to those 4 angels at whatever time when they let go of those winds that it's going to destroy the earth. It's going to cause harm to the earth. The way I look at space, rocket technology is real. And when they launch a rocket in Florida, and if you go to Florida, if you hear the sonic boom and you see this thing come down from the sky, this thing that literally is 200, it's over 200 feet tall, coming down and landing using fire. The thing that I would point out is, I'm not saying that if we think that that's fake, that we're deceived, because I wouldn't say that. I would actually say that if we think that's fake, that it would be the very first thing I said when I came into this stream, when I read what Jesus was saying to his disciples, when he says it was given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to them it's not. So like eyes to see and ears to hear. In Daniel 7, there's this story that happens. It's my favorite. I think it's my favorite chapter in the Bible. There's a story in the chapter. Daniel sees these beasts and all this stuff happens, and he's given an interpretation of what it is and everything. But what he sees in that chapter is that he sees that there's these 4 beasts that Daniel knows that they're evil, but he sees them having this dominion of the host of heaven. The host of heaven, I don't know exactly what that is. I think that's referring to the stars. I mean, in Enoch 18, Uriel said the stars and the host of heaven, a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. Well, in this story, though, or in this chapter, he sees this evil that's holding this dominion. of the host of heaven, and he sees them like this mouth that speaks great words against the Most High, and he sees this evil happening. And there's these 4 kingdoms, and the 4th one is just like it's way worse than all the other ones. But then he sees what he calls the Ancient of Days, and I'm assuming that that's probably the Most High God. And he sees him like sitting, and there's this judgment, like a court, almost like a court. And then he sees the Son of Man go before the Ancient of Days, and it was given him a dominion and a kingdom that lasts forever. And he ended up destroying all these other 4 kingdoms, like decimating all these other 4 kingdoms. It's explained in the next chapter that that dominion that he had was taken by transgression. It was like he stole it. And so the Son of Man just eliminates those other 4 kingdoms, and he has a dominion that's eternal. And it says, and the saints of the Most High, or the people of the saints of the Most High, shall possess the kingdom forever and ever.
So what are you likening this to?
I think the dominion is literally the things that happen in the sky, like that the space vehicles and all this kind of stuff. It's all transgression that they can even be up there. It's all they like stole it. And what I see happening right now with Flat Earth and just these kinds of shows that you're doing, and just this kind of conversation and topic, I'm seeing that kingdom being taken away. And so in Daniel 7, though, those beasts, he saw 4 beasts. And I think like it's so specific that, like, some people would probably look at it and say, oh, this is just a coincidence, but it can't be, because the beasts in Daniel 7, they all fly up to the stars. And like the first one, it had wings, and then its wings were taken away, or it plucked thereof, and it was lifted up from the earth, and it was standing on feet like a man. I think it's describing the shuttle, like the shuttle program.
So you're saying that when the wings were lost, you're saying that was the quote unquote
retirement of the shuttle, maybe. What I think these beasts are, they built this space station. That's what the shuttle did. It started this international effort to build this space station. And so the shuttle, because it had that big cargo bay, it brought all this equipment up there that they put together. And then after that was retired, how did NASA get to space or to get to the space station and stuff? Because NASA
the
could
Russians.
not even, it had to be the Russians, because NASA didn't even have the capability to launch a rocket.
And now supposedly through SpaceX now shuttling them up there.
So for 9 years, they were only riding Russian Soyuz. And then SpaceX Dragon just started doing it in 2020. I just made a video straight out of the Testament of Solomon. And I'm like 100 years ago, it probably wouldn't have made a lot of sense to anyone. But now, when we do have these pillars flying around in the sky, like, what else? And then the demons are holding it up there. It says, like, it's a crazy story, but rocket science came from demons is what it's called.
Many times on my show have I talked about the links of NASA, JPL, which is called Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but which is really Jack Parsons' laboratory.
Parsons, yep.
Jack Parsons was linked to Aleister Crowley very strongly. Here's the point, guys. If you look at the foundations of so-called NASA with JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, you find that all of its founders and leaders, including Jack Parsons and especially him, were associated with dark, occultic, ritualistic practices. What does that mean? It means the foundations of so-called NASA go back to occult ritual practices. When you say that rocket science comes from demons, that seems to be literal, dude. A lot of people want to think that it's a bunch of smart guys in a room using #science. When you really explore this and uncover the veils, you find a story that's quite different, as opposed to a bunch of smart guys in a fucking little room. No, it's a bunch of weirdos doing blood, sex,
Wizards.
ritualistic magic, summoning these so-called demons, or whatever you want to call them, who seem to have been given them the technology for this.
We should probably talk about the possibility of who they is. I mean, that's like the big question for the flat earthers. You know, they're the Freemasons or the Jesuits or the, and I would argue that it's not Freemasons. Whether they're sinister or not has nothing to do with it. But I see this as being led by spiritual forces. Like if we were to say that there was that like flat Earth is like a conspiracy theory, that's what some people say. I would say that that's a good explanation, that it's a conspiracy, but I don't think it's a human conspiracy. I believe in a spirit realm, like another realm, whether it be next to ours or within ours or outside of ours. I think there's another realm where there's other entities that easily influence human beings on Earth. So that being said, they do control like the media, and you can just see it. They control a lot of things, but in my mind, it's almost dangerous to say they are people. I don't think they're people at all. I think the people at NASA or SpaceX or Elon Musk himself, really, if you look at it in a very simple way, they've become attracted to darkness. That's why they want to go to space. Because if you think about it, there really is nothing in space for anybody. Even if you're a Globie and you love NASA, what are you going to get from space? There's no water, there's no air, there's no food, there's no nothing there. So how could that benefit you? Why do we spend $400 billion a year trying to go to this place of darkness? Because the world fell into darkness.
The Apostle Paul, when he wrote to the Ephesians, everybody knows this verse. We struggle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what the King James version says. But what it says is, like those Greek words, it says cosmic powers of evil in the heavenly realm. That's who we're struggling against. And so the idea of me being a malicious person and like I'm going to go out to deceive someone, I'm not like that. Are you? You're not like that. And what I would, challenge everyone to do is just to consider other people to be very much the same as yourself. I don't think that there's a group of elite people that rule the world from behind the scenes. Okay, we know that about the Rockefellers, and we know about the banking, and we know about all that stuff. Nobody denies that stuff exists, but those people don't run the world. 6 years ago, I didn't think this way. I didn't understand. I didn't believe what Paul told the Ephesians. Even if it's hard to believe, but if I consider it that way, then you're like, well, then who's the enemy? Who's doing the deceiving then? Is it, oh, you're saying these human people, but they're not humans? Well, there's one group of people that every single one of us that believes in a flat earth or doesn't believe the globe is very questionable to every single one of us. And those would be astronauts. There's only been like 570 people in all of time that have apparently left the earth, left the air. You know what I'm saying? Gone out of the place where we all have lived our whole lives. The human body exists here. I don't think it exists out there.
These waters above, I think they're not physical and material in a way that anything on Earth is. I think it's an entirely different realm. And so with that, I don't think people can exist in that realm in a human body. I don't think that happens. I think that's something, I think that's a deception. I think that's lies that entities are doing and telling. That's what I think. There's only been 600 astronauts, and I think that they're very sus.
I don't think that astronauts are people. I think they're people when they're here on the earth because they have families and you know what I'm saying, like that. But in the same way that truth comes into this world, I think other things
come into this world in sinister ways.
We see these astronauts are all seem to be Masons. What do we know about the Masons, et cetera, et cetera? That, they seem to be associated with some type of elite status, elite bloodline, the elites. There's a lot of indications that there may be a serpent seed amongst humanity, a reptilian-like characteristic that runs amongst some of us.
Satan's children, you're saying? People that have a father of lies rather than a father of truth. Like,
can I be so bold to say that the theory would be that the fallen ones, the Archons, were locked up in the heavens, in the abyss, for quote-unquote eternity, and they're using their progeny, their humanoid spawn on this earth, in an effort to do like a cosmic jailbreak, right?
Yes, exactly. That's like you worded that, a cosmic jailbreak. That's a perfect way to word it. What better way to get let out of your prison than to be let out by the very victims that you're trying to ruin? You're going to cause them to willingly let you out. And this is what happens in the book of Revelation. This is what happens in the book of Enoch. Okay, so that brings up the spaceships and like the Dragon capsule and the ISS and stuff like that. I think that all that metal and all the machinery parts and the rocket engines that produce all the thrust and the RCS thrusters that keep something in the right orbit, I think that's all real. But how has it become a thing? Because of these 600 astronauts. I think they're just devils going forth to the kings of the earth and doing miracles and gathering them up to that battle of the great day of the Lord, Armageddon. So just this morning, like probably the last couple hours, these astronauts, they opened the hatch of the Dragon and they floated into the space station. Big deal, right? And it's like, oh yeah, funny show, because there's an element of fakery to it, and we know that. I'm not saying we know everything about it, but we know that there's a deception, that it's a lie. But in Revelation 16 verse 13, he says, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So that really caught my attention one day when I'm watching. This is cruise 6, so they've done this quite 6 times or 7 times by now. But when these astronauts are floating, like think of what a frog is like. Why would he say like frogs? And then so some people in your audience right now are saying, is he insinuating that the astronauts are unclean spirits? And that's what I'm learning. In the book of Enoch, chapter 17, he's in a place, and he's a place of darkness at that. And he says that he saw those who were there were like flaming fire, and they could make themselves appear as men when they wished. So there's little things like that I say, okay, so there's some sort of spirits that can appear as men. And when I was talking about Revelation 16, those unclean spirits that he saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, well, it describes what they are, what they're doing. And when it describes what they're doing, it really sounds to me like the astronauts are really all that are needed to make the whole world believe this lie. And it says, where is it here? It says, for they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And then there's another verse I was looking at in Psalm 2. It says, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision.
So this goes back to your idea that these astronauts are something basically other than humans, or at least humans as we conceive them. And do you think they're being identified through these secret societies? We often hear that they're Masons. You think there's like a system to identify them? Do they know each other?
That's what's like a mystery to me is, just for example, whoever, Don Pettit or whatever. He's got kids and a wife. Okay. So it makes me think that, you'd have to be manifested as probably as a child and grow up and, have kids and a wife and live a normal life in order to be accepted as a person. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know exactly, but that is a good question, how that works. I don't really know. Enoch said something in Enoch chapter 71 that caught my attention, and that's what I believe now, because it's so clear. He said he was his spirit ascended into the heavens, or he was taken up. Someone took him up there. It was an angel that took him up there because they were showing him different things, and that's just an amazing chapter. But what it describes is this house made of crystal. And so he goes up in the sky, and he said he went up to the heaven of heavens, and that's where this house was. And it said it was girt with fire, and like there was a fire around it or whatever, but it was a crystal house, and the Most High was on that throne, and all the angels were encircling that throne. And I'm like,
do you think it's Polaris? Do you think they're referring to Polaris?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think the sky has always been exactly what we have today.
Right.
We got other crap up there now, but as far as sun, moon, stars, they're doing the same thing that God told them to do, or whatever, however you want to look at that. They're consistent, is what I mean. I filmed Polaris through my telescope once, and it caught my attention because of the colors that it was. This is another reason why I kind of believe that that's like a crystal house and then there's a throne there. In Revelation, I think it's chapter 4, he says he saw a door open in heaven and a voice told him, "Come up here." And he went up there and he described what he saw. He described the colors of Polaris. Just very clearly too. You see Polaris, maybe you can see my mouse going around it. This was a Sony Handycam, and I took it through an 8-inch. I have an 8-inch Dobsonian reflector. It's just a concave mirror, is basically, and it's got a 4-foot focal length. Okay, so this is the North Star. I'm going to turn in my Bible here just to read you the verse in Revelation 4, and then I show some pictures of some stones. Okay, it says, "After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was, if it were a trumpet talking to me, which said, 'Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter.' And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, like in sight like unto an emerald." That's John 2,000 years ago. That was his description. And that was him going up to heaven to where God was. I believe the hell used to be in the heart of the earth. But I believe when Jesus was crucified, if you read Matthew 27, or there's other books too, the book of Adam and Eve, there's a prophecy in there that the word of God made to Adam about when he would shed his blood at Golgotha and descend down into hell and break the bars of iron. So people actually don't think that I'm just saying these things. This comes from the book of Enoch. In chapter 10, it was Michael, the archangel, was commanded by God to bind Simyaza and his associates in the valleys of the earth, so in the ground. And I don't know why this was or anything, but he told Michael to bind them in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations. And that was a judgment that was given to these fallen angels. And so the 70 generations goes by. Who was the 70th generation from Enoch? Jesus. So it starts to speak a whole different story to me about him being crucified and descending into hell for 3 days, because in Enoch 10, after it says to bind them in the valleys of the earth,
until the judgment was consummated or whatever. And then it says, in those days, they would be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment in which they would be confined forever. So I'm thinking, so they're going to be in the earth until Jesus is here, or about that time. Then at that time, they're going to be led off to the abyss of fire. They're going to be taken from the earth, they're the valleys of the earth, and put into the abyss of fire. And where's the abyss of fire? It's where those 7 stars that transgressed were. It's beyond that abyss. So, and it's at the end of heaven and earth. So we got earth and then heaven, right? So right up here somewhere. And there's a place of darkness up there. We all call it the night sky. Some people call it space.
There's prophecies in Enoch that of Jesus. And my understanding is that when Jesus was crucified, when he gave up the ghost, all these physical things happened in the earth. There was an earthquake, and the rocks were rent, and the veil of the temple was torn. And then it says, and many bodies of the saints came up out of their graves. It's like came out of the ground and went up to the holy city, or went into the holy city, and appeared to many. So the people that were there saw this happening. And even the centurion was like, that was when, after he saw those things happen, like he knew, he said, surely this was the Son of God that they had just crucified. And it says that he went down into the heart of the earth, and he was there for 3 days, I believe. And this is not a popular belief, but in Matthew 27, it basically, it gives me the idea that Jesus resurrected, like from Adam up until the time of Jesus. Jesus took them to heaven, or up to New Jerusalem. And I know that's not a very popular idea, I guess, but to me, it just says it right there. Many bodies of the saints came up out of their graves. They were resurrected. And wasn't Jesus the first resurrected from the dead?
So much like me, Joe, you see this whole understanding as very consequential. To me, when people say, what does it matter? Or they'll say, oh, okay, so what? I still have to go to work. Or what's the big deal? How does that change my life? Like,
what if the devil was deceiving you, and you're going to end up, instead of living with what we would call good and true, you're going to die with the false and darkness.
Right. Because isn't it the truth that sets one free?
It is.
Really. If anything will release us from bondage, it's the truth.
Yes.
Because the only real bondage is a mental bondage. It's a spiritual bondage. That's the one you need to be worried about. You don't need to be worried about thrown into a jail. You don't have to be worried about dying or starving to death. It's your spirit that you need to be worried about. It's the kingdom. Your treasure should be built in the kingdom.
If we are to free ourselves, where does freedom start? It starts in your mind. It starts in your consciousness, right?
Free will.
What greater enslavement is there than when they've tricked you into not even knowing where you are? And right now, most people are operating under a paradigm, Joe, that they're unaware of. They're operating from a belief system. They're operating from the belief that this whole place started from a cosmic accident, a big bang, billions of years ago. They're operating under a belief that they evolved over billions of years from a single-celled amoeba into the complex being that they are today. Whether or not they're thinking about that consciously, that's their belief system, propagandized, indoctrinated, and conditioned. They don't know it was conditioned. They don't know it was propaganda. Once you realize that understanding is merely a belief, you begin to see the world with fresh eyes. When you can drop the indoctrination, you begin to see that you live in a creation. Once you understand the creation, you may be able to see the creator behind it. What would you recommend in these times that we're in, man? How would you recommend that one conducts their life?
Well, it all comes down to truth, Z. Jesus said something right before he was crucified, and I say this all the time, but because it like jabbed me in my heart to made me understand something. Pilate was asking him, so are you a king? And Jesus was like, you say I'm a king. Basically, he said, the reason why I came into this world was to bear witness to the truth. And then he said, everyone that is of the truth hears my voice. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he also said, if you stay with my words or whatever, you are my disciples. And he said, and you'll know the truth, and it will set you free. It's not that I can say, Jesus Christ was born on this day and he died on this day. And I don't know all that history. No one can even know that. But I do believe that God created the world. And then I believe that ever since the time when those stars came out and didn't do what they were, it said at the beginning of their rising that they transgressed. So that would be the fourth day of, like the evening of the fourth day of creation. And I think from that point on until Jesus came, it was misrepresented. People did not look at it as the truth, what he actually, the words he spoke. And then when Jesus came, what did he do? He went in the synagogues and he taught the gospel of the kingdom. He preached the gospel of the kingdom in their synagogues. They crucified him. And before they crucified him, he said, well, I just came here to see the truth. This is why when you say you embrace the flat earth thing, I embrace it because it literally frees captives from that prison, from believing that that prison is somehow their future. There's a lot of people in this world right now that think that Mars is a destination for a civilization, and they really believe this, even though it's all just an idea. That's very scary to me. So I embrace what can free a person from that deadly type of mindset.